In April 2024, Radio Free Asia announced the release from prison of 46-year-old Mark Madan, a butcher and farmer, after serving a 7-year sentence in a detention facility in Urumqi, the capital of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region in China. So far, nothing exceptional to report, until you consider the charges filed against him by Beijing's government. Local police officials plainly stated that the butcher had been arrested because he had, quote, stopped others from smoking and drinking. More precisely, he advised some of his friends to abstain from tobacco and alcohol at an event held in 2016. That is it. In any other situation, Mukadem's actions would be interpreted as him being kind of a spoilsport at worst, or as him providing some sound healthcare advice at best. Any cardiologist in the world might be liable for incarceration if that were a crime. But Mukadem belonged to the Muslim Uyghur ethnic minority. As such, security officials considered his friendly advice as being part of a radicalization effort, and for this crime against the state, Madan was first sent to a re-education camp and then transferred to a prison in Urumqi. Mark Madan's case is far from an isolated one, and in Urumqi, he may have been surrounded by hundreds or thousands of prisoners charged with similar offenses. In fact, the Xinjiang capital is home to the No. 3 detention center, also known as Dabancheng, one of the most mysterious and largest prisons in all of China, and indeed possibly the world. Dabancheng is a district just an hour's drive southwest of Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang. The vast autonomous region in northwestern China is home to several Muslim ethnic communities, mostly Uyghurs, but also Kazakhs, Mongols, and Hui minorities. As acknowledged by Chinese Communist Party officials, Beijing is pursuing an aggressive campaign of re-education and resettlement against the Uyghurs and other minorities with the goal of combating religious extremists. But as we shall learn later on in more detail, this campaign is targeted against the entire community, and Chinese leadership has perpetuated systematic human rights violations and crimes against humanity. The No. 3 detention center in Dabancheng is a powerful, tangible example of such oppression, but has always been, and still is, shrouded in a veil of mystery. Now, that veil was partially lifted in July 2021, thanks to the report published by Associated Press reporter and Pulitzer Prize finalist Dabancheng Kang. Mr. Kang drew upon previous research conducted by Canadian law student Sean Zhang, according to which the site was commissioned back in 2017. By September 2018, Chinese authorities had completed their building work, and press agency Reuters was able to capture a photo of the entrance. The sign above the entrance read Urumqi Vocational Skills Education and Training Center, which sounds harmless enough, except that this phrase is often used as a euphemism for re-education, indoctrination, and even labor camps used by Beijing to assimilate into communist dogma those elements perceived to be enemies of the state. This concept is even more sinister if you consider that re-education, indoctrination, and assimilation via labor was the purpose of Mao Zedong's deadly Laogai system, the Chinese equivalent of the gulags. In 2019, the nameplate above the Vocational Skills Center was replaced with a new one. Now the facility would be identified as No. 3 Detention Center. In other words, it had become a Kangshou Su, a formal prison dedicated to holding defendants who were awaiting trial. After its rebranding in 2019, the detention center was enlarged with new buildings, approximately 1.5 kilometers long, that's nearly 1 mile. Overall, the facility covers an area of almost 90 hectares or 220 acres. The complex is surrounded by powerful blue-tinted walls standing at almost 8 meters or 25 feet. These barriers are topped by electrified wire and further reinforced by watchtowers manned by armed guards. In April 2021, Dabancheng Kang was allowed inside those walls and was given an exclusive, if only partial, tour of No. 3. The journalist was able to glimpse that the inmates were housed in several separate sections within the camp, each containing 240 cells. Based on the estimated capacity of each cell and the number of individual sections, Kang calculated that, quote, the center could hold roughly 10,000 people and many more if crowded, based on satellite imagery and the cells and benches seen during the tour. Each cell has at least one window, which, according to the center's director, Zhu Hongbin, are, quote, totally unbreakable. Zhu proudly showed the reporter around the prison's control room, featuring some 24 screens streaming footage from the cells. In classic Orwellian style, the control room does not capture footage, but also broadcasts video into the inmates' quarters. More precisely, guards at No. 3 can control what prisoners can or cannot watch. As you might guess, the choice is severely limited, either programming from state broadcaster China Central Television or educational videos, although probably not this one. Quoting again from director Zhu, they need to be taught why it's bad to kill people, why it's bad to steal. Kang described how a group of prisoners attended one of these educational screenings, although this appeared more akin to a party indoctrination session. Quote, "The Uyghur inmates sat in uniform rows with their legs crossed in lotus position and their backs ramrod straight, numbered and tagged, gazing at a television playing grainy black and white images of Chinese Communist Party history." End quote. The journalist then met with a public security official, Zhao Zhongwei, who confirmed that the Dabancheng prison was a pre-trial detention center in which inmates could be held for up to 1 year, according to China's judicial process. Zhao showcased the state-of-the-art 22 rooms in which defendants could speak via video conferencing with their lawyers and relatives. That's all well and good, except that prisoners would be strapped into their chairs. Throughout the tour, Mr. Zhu and Mr. Zhao repeatedly reassured Dake Kang that Dabancheng was not a training center, i.e. a modern-day Laogai. Quoting again, "There was no connection between our detention center and the training centers. There's never been one around here." Now, officials state that No. 3 Detention Center is a modern and humane facility which displays China's commitment to the rehabilitation of criminals. Quoting again, "Rights are protected and only lawbreakers need worry about detention." During their state-sponsored visit of Dabancheng, Associated Press journalists did not witness direct instances of torture or beatings, but accounts collected at a later stage from survivors revealed the use of frequent physical violence. One of the witnesses, Paride Amati, reported fainting after she had seen how 2 teenage prisoners had their skin beaten, quote, "bloody and raw." Another witness, a teacher who remained anonymous, told how she could hear the screams of detainees while being shocked with electrical batons or beaten with metal chairs. A more detailed description of what may happen behind the walls of Dabancheng and other prisons can be gleaned from the China Cables, a stash of classified files obtained by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. The cables include a 2017 document authored by Zhu Hailan, the then deputy head of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, in Xinjiang. Mr. Zhu clearly describes the inner workings and purpose of detention centers, i.e. to subject prisoners to long periods of enforced indoctrination. More in detail, Zhu's memo states that these centers should enforce a strict physical and mental control upon inmates with multiple security layers, all protected by armed guards. Moreover, prisoners should be monitored 24/7 via video surveillance, and every aspect of their lives should be controlled to the very last detail, from their assigned dormitory to their spot in the lunchtime queue. Detainees are usually brought into Dabancheng and other pre-trial centers without having been served with formal charges. The Chinese judicial system allows for suspects to be detained up to 37 days, after which a local procuratorate has to decree a formal arrest. In cases pertaining to national security, terrorism, and the corruption of officials, suspects may be detained up to 6 months without a formal arrest. But the Zhu memo indicates that prisoners must serve a term of at least 1 year before they could even be considered for release. Time alone will not grant freedom, however, as detainees are evaluated according to a points or credits system. These points can be awarded for categories such as ideological transformation, compliance with discipline, or study and training. Now, even if prisoners were to survive the allegedly frequent beatings, withstand ideological humiliation, and earn enough credits, well, they might not be completely free yet. Authorities may certify that they have completed their educational transformation and release them. Even so, they would be immediately reassigned to another tier of camps where they would be subjected to up to 6 months of labor skills training, which, according to the Department of State reports, is a euphemism for forced labor. After the completion of this additional labor skills term, detainees may be returned to their communities. But Zhu Hailan's directive states that they should be kept under the watchful eye of the police and the judiciary. The students, as Zhu calls them, quote, should not leave the line of sight for 1 year. According to a Genocide Watch report published in August 2023, the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, is intent on oppressing, displacing, even physically eliminating the Uyghur Muslim minority. As part of the plan, known as Big Development of the Northwest, party officials have been holding millions of Uyghur prisoners in re-education camps. All the while, millions of ethnic majority Han Chinese have been relocated to Xinjiang and forcibly placed in Uyghur households. Officially, Beijing intends to defeat local Islamist and separatist terrorism. Major cities in Xinjiang and beyond have in fact suffered several bombing, shooting, and stabbing attacks conducted by Uyghur extremist groups such as the East Turkestan Islamic Movement or the Turkestan Islamic Party. Since 1992, Uyghur terror movements have killed some 338 civilians, police officers, border guards, and party officials. Moreover, the region was plagued by several inter-ethnic riots pitting Uyghurs against Han Chinese. But according to Genocide Watch, the end goal of Beijing's anti-terror operations is to snuff out any claim to independence. The party seeks to achieve this by annihilating the Uyghur ethnic and religious identity to be replaced by communist orthodoxy. According to Genocide Watch, the whole of Xinjiang is under constant surveillance. Police forces maintain hundreds of thousands of files documenting the movements and conversations of Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities in order to identify behaviors which may indicate extremist views. As part of their surveillance plans, police authorities have enacted a tactic known as the double-linked household system, initially devised to control the population of Tibet. The system first divides inhabited centers into sections of 10 households each. Then each household is instructed to keep watch over the other families and to report back to the police about any security issue or any warning sign of extremism, a definition which may include something as simple as praying or abstaining from alcohol. Essentially, the police have turned thousands of Xinjiang families into informers, a practice well established within the Ministry of Public Security since the 1950s. Those who are deemed to pose a danger to Beijing may end up in a prison such as No. 3 Detention Center at Dabancheng, previously known as a re-education camp, but defined by Genocide Watch as a concentration prison. Up to 2 million Uyghurs and other minorities may have been detained in the period from 2017 to 2023 alone. In these camps, they are subject to intense indoctrination programs designed to wipe out their religious beliefs and even the use of their language. If psychological methods do not succeed in bending the prisoner's will, guards will resort to beatings and sexual assault. Once prisoners are considered to have been re-educated, they will be released from the camps only to be exploited as forced labor in the production of export products. The Chinese government admitted to the existence of such camps only in 2019, claiming that all occupants had graduated and the facilities had now been shut down. But investigations conducted by the likes of Associated Press and intelligence provided by former detainees has painted a rather less rosy picture. While many camps have indeed been closed, most have been simply rebranded as standard prisons or pre-trial detention centers, just like Dabancheng. Therefore, the system designed to suppress Uyghur identity has been incorporated into the formal judicial system, but the essence and purpose of these internment camps has absolutely not changed. Moreover, after Beijing admitted to the existence of the camp system, the rate of incarceration appears to have doubled. Hundreds of thousands of Xinjiang residents have been arrested on the most trivial of charges and received sentences of 5 years and above. According to Darren Byler, professor of international studies at Simon Fraser University in British Columbia, Canada, quote, "We're moving from a police state to a mass incarceration state. Hundreds of thousands of people have disappeared from the population. It's the criminalization of normal behavior." Local authorities justified the mass incarcerations as a positive symptom of their efficient war on terror. As stated by spokesperson Xu Guixang, during the process, the number of people sentenced in accordance with the law will increase. This is a concrete indication of our work efficiency. By taking these measures, terrorists are more likely to be brought to justice. A study from Yale University, published in August 2024, looked at the records published by the main judicial body for the region, the Xinjiang High People's Procuratorate. These files documented that from 2017 to 2022, the Procuratorate prosecuted 540,000 individuals belonging to the Uyghur or other Turkic minorities. These defendants received terms averaging 8.8 years, which indicates that Chinese courts sentenced Xinjiang residents to a total of 4.7 million years in prison. But the efforts to wipe out Uyghur identity are not limited to harsh imprisonment. The central government has enacted a family planning program designed to curb the birth rate of Xinjiang minorities. This program includes tactics such as forced sterilization and abortions, imposed marriages between Uyghur women and Han men, or the compulsory relocation of minority children. According to Dr. Adrian Zenz, senior fellow in China Studies Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, between 2015 and 2018, the growth rate of the Uyghur population fell by 84%. Now, there may be an even darker aspect to the campaign waged against Xinjiang minorities. Uyghur prisoners may be subjected to illegal organ harvesting authorized and directed by the government itself. This grotesque practice may sound too extreme even for a totalitarian regime, but medical evidence appears to back its existence. In April 2022, the American Journal of Transplantation published the paper Execution by Organ Procurement: Breaching the Dead Donor Rule in China. Authors Matthew P. Robertson and Jacob Levy reviewed 2,838 Chinese medical papers dealing with transplants, and in 71 of these publications, they found evidence that, quote, brain death could not have properly been declared. In these cases, the removal of the heart during organ procurement must have been the proximate cause of the donor's death. Because these organ donors could only have been prisoners, our findings strongly suggest that physicians in the People's Republic of China have participated in executions by organ removal. End quote. Co-author Matthew Robertson testified about these findings at a hearing held by the Tom Lantos Commission, a human rights panel within the US Congress. At the same hearing, Ethan Gutman, a senior fellow at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, presented evidence that the CCP had inflicted large-scale organ harvesting upon Uyghurs and other minorities. Gutman pointed out that two groups of Xinjiang detainees appeared to be released earlier than expected, those aged 18 and those aged 28 to 29 years old. According to him, this is, quote, the exact age of physical development that the Chinese medical establishment prefers for organ harvesting. Based on his research, including interviews with camp survivors, Gutman estimated that 25,000 to 50,000 prisoners were subjected to forced organ removal every year. At the end of 2024, no further information has emerged about the No. 3 detention center at Dabancheng, at least not in traditional Western media. Curiously enough, we did find that the mysterious mega-prison is not blurred out on Google Maps, as you might expect. Instead, it can be easily found just northwest of the Dabancheng district. But it is officially listed as the Urumqi Vocational Skills Education Training Center. And as a facility listed on Google, this training center can of course be rated by users, one of whom awarded 5 stars to the center, commenting, "Really good vocational school, study the fashion industry yourself, no complaints." The most recent review, too, simply affirmed that there's a bad atmosphere. Another recent comment, originally posted in Chinese, states, "If you are a Han Chinese and are reading this, please come and visit us. This is not a good time." But the vast majority of reviews simply awarded 1 star to the facility, just pointing out that No. 3 is actually a prison, or even worse, a concentration camp. Which again is the view shared by Genocide Watch. According to the organization, the Chinese Communist Party has already used Dabancheng and other pre-trial detention centers to perpetrate 3 out of the 10 stages of genocide: the discrimination, persecution, and eventually extermination of the Uyghurs and other Xinjiang minorities. And by obstinately refusing to acknowledge the extrajudicial nature of their detention centers, Chinese authorities have completed a 4th stage, that of denial. According to Genocide Watch, quote, "The best response to denial is punishment by an international tribunal or national courts." While it is unrealistic that CCP authorities may be judged by an international court in the foreseeable future, there is another measure that can be taken against denial: continuing to document, to testify, and to share whatever information available, lest the plight of the persecuted and the crimes of the tormentors slip once more into the shadows of oblivion. Thank you for watching.